Let's do this. The of Hockey podcast by the faithful for the faithful. I'm David Staples of the Edmonton Journal, and I'm here tonight with Bruce McCurdy. Hey, Bruce.
Hey, David. How you doing tonight?
Good. We both just watched a rather rancid AHL game. The Bakersfield Condors beat 6-2 by the Colorado Eagles after beating the Colorado Eagles 6-2 the previous night. I watched both games. I've been watching a little bit of Bakersfield this year and these two most recent games. So tonight we're going to come at you guys and girls with our take on some of the prospects on the AHL team. Bruce, before we get into that though, let's talk about the Oilers. Now they might play Friday or they might not. It's interesting. JT Miller of the Canucks. Did you catch what he said today, Bruce?
Yeah, well, I certainly got the gist of it.
What was that?
I read a story. Well, summarize was that he didn't think there was any way they'd be ready to play, that he didn't think he would be ready to play, and he was one of about two players on the team who didn't test positive for COVID, and he's been out of action for 2 weeks, and I guess they got one team practice tomorrow and a game day skate and a pre-game warm-up, and then they're supposed to be able to play the Oilers. And he said that about himself, but he also said that a number of his teammates had been sick, so they have a lot further road to go to be close to game ready. And his conclusion was that the team just wouldn't be ready to play, and they probably shouldn't play on Friday.
I read 10 guys have been skating since Monday. And did they skate today?
Well, some of them did. I mean, at this moment, 14 players have been cleared to play. Two goalies, 6 defensemen, and only 6 forwards. So there'll be more next couple of days, but there may also be members of the Utica Comets called into service for Friday night's game, should it go ahead.
Did they call those players up previously?
Well, I don't know. I mean, that
because otherwise they can't play.
Because there would be that's players. All I know is that's how many players off the Vancouver roster have been cleared, and what's the status of the Comets. I'm not sure if they've made recalls or not.
Well, if the NHL's attitude is that the show must go on, and they were hoping for a ringing endorsement of that kind of old school saying, they did not get it from JT Miller in the least. He was not at all happy. I wonder if one more day off, like if they canceled Friday's game and they were playing Saturday, would be sufficient. Or, didn't sound. I imagine they're just not too keen about the rest of the season, the Canucks.
But now,
on the other hand, they are professional athletes getting paychecks, and but we'll see what happens. I wouldn't be surprised if it gets postponed.
I wouldn't either. I mean, one of the things that Miller said was that he says one thing when the players themselves get sick, but when their wives get sick and their children and their pregnant wives was the third thing he said, then it goes beyond hockey. And he was quite outspoken that he said, I'm a competitor and life comes first, basically. I don't have the exact quote in front of me, but it was fairly direct.
Sure, and there's a lot of fear around this disease. So you can imagine there's a lot of stress for everybody involved. Well, we'll see what happens in that, and we'll if they're going there. There's a game Friday night with the Bakersfield team, Bruce. So maybe if the Oilers don't play, we'll get back together and do another podcast on Bakersfield that night.
Sure. Here's the exact quote. I don't feel ready, if I'm being honest. It's kind of crazy. I know everyone has a job to do, but to expect our entire team to be ready to play in one practice and a pregame skate is a bit hard to comprehend. To be brutally honest, we're going to need more time than this to come back and play hockey. Even the guys that didn't get it aren't ready. And he says, I hope people don't take this the wrong way. I'm a super competitive guy, but this isn't about hockey for our team. This is about the health and safety of our players, their family, and their children. This isn't about making the playoffs. What we're being asked to do is not going to be safe, if you're asking me. And then Tanner
It's
Pearson chipped in with, I think guys are pretty confident in themselves to get over it, but when it starts hitting wives and kids and pregnant wives, that's when it really becomes more than hockey. That's when it scares you a bit.
I wonder if the Vancouver Canucks knew what Miller was going to say and were wanting him to make that kind of comment public because it may be, in fact, like the organization. Um, if you want to lobby the NHL and to change its mind, that was a pretty effective thing to have happen as a player to come forward and speak out like that. And I wonder if in fact that they didn't know he was going to do that and try to change minds in New York.
I read that article on tsn.ca earlier today, but now it's been updated to say the National Hockey League, Players Association, and Canucks Medical will be involved in determining whether the Canucks are healthy enough to play on Friday. This is Darren Drager of TSN. Decision will be based on the doctor's evaluations of the players tomorrow, meaning Thursday. So they're still hedging their bets a little bit. Here's my prediction, David, my fearless prediction. They're going to make the Oilers fly to Vancouver and then they're going to cancel the game.
Bruce, you always are. Yeah, yeah.
Well,
You're
if the
probably right.
NHL is involved, they're going to find some way to make it tough on the Oilers. It's my
I don't
long
think
and bitter
I don't. I think
experience.
Edmonton will delay. It's they. I think they have their own plane, don't they? They charter a plane.
Well,
So I assume they'll skate in Edmonton Thursday morning and
I
then
know.
wait for the decision.
Here's what I don't understand. Vancouver was scheduled to play in Edmonton three different games, all in Edmonton, on the 3rd, the 12th, and the 14th, and now they're playing a makeup game in Vancouver on the 16th, and then the Oilers had to fly to Winnipeg on the 17th. Like, what is that? They got to fly two time zones away or two time zones earlier to play Saturday after playing in Vancouver on Friday. But why are the three games that were missed in Edmonton why is the first one being made up in Vancouver? I don't understand it. I don't get this.
Well, maybe it's harder to get the Canucks to fly somewhere else and clear all the health regulations. I don't know.
Yeah.
Uh, Bruce, Ryden Nugent Hopkins is not practicing yet with the team. He's been on the ice skating, so it's a little
Yep.
concerning. He
Yep.
took a blow to
Right.
the head, and that's a little bit frightening. And we'll see what happens. He's having a tough year. He's having a really tough year, and a lot of people are, for the first time, I'm starting to hear a serious debate about whether the Oilers should re-up him at the amount of money that he's been getting. The $6 million a year, and I think it's a completely fair debate. Like honestly, it's a lot of money in today's NHL. $6 million a year for a player, and they need more than Nugent Hopkins has given them all year. So this injury sets him back in terms of changing people's minds. If that's what his goal is, I'm sure it is. My own remedy would be to reunite him with Draisaitl and Yamamoto, but we'll see if that happens. But this isn't good news.
No. No, he's coming off his seasons of 69 and 61 points. His two career highs, and the 61, of course, he only played 65 games last year, and the Oilers only played 71. Uh, but this year, he's on pace for, if they played a full 82 game season, for around 55 points. And his even strength production has just fallen through the floor. And we talked about this before. He's had one primary assist at even strength in the entire season. Like, not once does he set up Connor McDavid, his regular line mate, 23 goals leading team scorer for the Oilers. Not once has Nugent Hopkins set up McDavid for an even strength goal, and that's just baffling. Like, how is that even possible when they played the better part of 40 games together?
I never would have thought, Bruce, that they would have so little chemistry together.
No.
Like because in the past when they played together, they were kind of not bad. Like I remember that line one year where when they finally moved Nugent Hopkins to the wing, he had been center and he had not been thriving there, and they finally moved him to the wing and they put him with Ty Ratty and McDavid on a line, and that line was really good for about a month, and gave hope both for Ty Ratty's performance going forward and for Nugent Hopkins. Now Nuge has prospered generally speaking on the wing, especially when he was with Draisaitl and Yamamoto. So I just think to get Nugent Hopkins going, they almost need to reunite that line, if for no other reason. See if that works. See what you can to get this guy's game cranked up again, because he's got half the even strength points, half the rate of even strength point scoring as he had last year, pretty much. He's really
Yeah.
struggling, and hopefully he'll be hale and hearty and ready to go when the Oilers do return to the ice. Bruce,
He did skate. He just skated
yeah.
before the team, and they were talking about him maybe being back. Well, that was yesterday. I guess he wasn't back today then. So he's yeah. Well, he's close anyway because he wouldn't be skating at all if he was concussed. You know.
So last time we talked, I was talking about like how the grade A shots had dropped off for the Oilers, and I kind of fleshed it out by looking at some other statistics other than just our own grade A statistics, our own
Mhm.
project. So in terms of official shots on net, comparing the first 12 games, or excuse me, the first 30 games that the Oilers played this year, when they were regularly outchancing, outscoring, and outshooting other teams, compared to the last 12 games. So, um, this ties into the, I see the Oilers as a team right now, kind of at a crossroads. You and other people have made a very fair point that they have had a very difficult schedule in the last month, and the last dozen games they have won 7 games. So there's a lot to be said for that. They've gotten great goaltending. They've had great special teams, but I'm seeing this trend and it's worrying. So I dug in a little deeper, and here's what I found. So when it comes to shots, Bruce, in the first 30 games, the Oilers averaged 32 shots a game. And in the last 12, they've had 25 shots a game. They're giving up the same number of shots, 31 and 31. When it
Yeah.
comes to high danger chances for, now this is measured by Natural Stat Trick, the website. And what they do is they chart this mechanically.
Right.
They just have a defined home plate area in front of in front of the net, and if a shot is taken at net, it doesn't have to hit the net from that area. They count that as a high danger chance. So in the first 30 games, the Oilers averaged 12.7 high danger chances per game, according to Natural Stat Trick, and in the last 12, 7.1.
Geez,
So
that
they've gone.
mirrors our stats, eh?
Well, what we count is what we consider to be shots that have a 25% chance of going in. So they don't even necessarily have, like if it's Leon Draisaitl shooting from outside that home plate area on a one-timer, we'll count that. But for us to count it, the shot has to be on net, and it has to be a hard shot on net, not just a dribbler. But our numbers are just the same, or very similar. In the first 30 games, we had the exact same number, 12.7 grade A chances per game,
Wow.
and we have them dropping to 7.8 grade A chances per game in the last 12. Now, this is both of us, both these
Mhm.
independent, way of looking at scoring chances. See, let's face it, this is a kind of a catastrophic drop off in offense in the last dozen games. Now, again, as you say, it could be related, as other people, it could be probably is partially related to a crappy schedule, a very difficult schedule. In terms of goals, they've dropped off half. They're scoring one half goal per game less. So they've gone from 3.33 goals per game to 2.83 goals for per game. They're also giving up slightly fewer goals. So their defense has improved a little bit, but man, they've gone from what I saw as a very good team with a legitimate shot of going deep into the playoffs to a team that if they don't figure this out somehow, they are going nowhere.
Mhm.
And I see no chemistry on their top two lines, and a coach who has a great opportunity to impress me and impress us all by figuring it out and getting the right players on the ice at the right time and getting this offense cranked up again.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about that schedule, though, shall we?
Go
Uh,
ahead.
that um, I mean, the last 12 games, they started with a pair of games in Calgary where they lost the first game, won the second game 7-3. Then they came home and they beat Winnipeg 2-1, and they beat Winnipeg again 4-2. Okay, and that was the end of the schedule following the script of what was originally written for the season. Game 34 against Winnipeg. Since then, on March 20th, the Oilers have had count them, 6 games postponed. They've had 2 makeup games inserted both at the end of Eastern road trips and jammed in at the schedule on forcing the Oilers to play back-to-backs of one description or another. They had one game moved up to accommodate another game for TV on the day of the Colby Cave Memorial. They played their 2 worst games of the season. I'll say that unequivocally. Their 2 worst games of the season were those 2 games that were rescheduled at the end of those 2 road trips. They lost 4-0 at Montreal. They lost 5-0 at Calgary. They stank in both games, and there was mitigating circumstances in both games. So, of the last 8 games of the 12, 7 of them were on the road. They had 1 home game. They had another home game postponed because the other team got sick, Vancouver. And then they went straight back on the 3-game road trip with a Western game at the end tacked on. So even with those 2 horrible stinkers in there, in those 8 games, the Oilers are 4-2-2, 10 points. And that's a survival rate, or a little better than a survival rate in the NHL, even with the cockamamie point system. You'd expect 4-3-1 out of 8 games to sort of tread water, and 4-4 will do it, right? But 4-2-2 is actually not bad. And you and I will agree they didn't play a lot of good hockey in those 8 games, but somehow they hung around and were able to get points in all but the 2 that they completely stunk the place out. And so to me, this was I was worried about this segment. I thought they could really take a dive in the standings during these road trips, and they really haven't. And so, I mean, the positive to take away from that is 10 points in those 8 games, where 7 were on the road, and there was a lot of circumstances that were not in Edmonton's favor. All the reschedulings and moving around and added days on and the road trips and stuff. And now they're waited out another week where they should have had evenly spaced games against Vancouver, and now they're going back at it with 2 more road games at Vancouver and then at Winnipeg the next night, making 9 out of 10. But even if they lose both those games, they'll have 10 points out of those 10 games. So to me, their performance has dipped during this sort of natural downer time in the schedule, but their results have held steady enough for whatever reason. It's McDavid and Draisaitl providing big goals one night, or it might be Koskinen or Smith coming up with big saves on another night, or one night the bottom 6 will chip in, and somehow they've found ways to win or get points in the close games. And it was only in those 2 blowouts that there was they turn out the lights early on both of those. But so there's positives to be found in the negatives.
So the glass is half full and the glass is half empty. I think it's fair to say. And usually I'm a glass is half full kind of guy. But I can't be, because I'm not seeing the solution to this present itself. I think there are solutions, but I'm not seeing the solution. So until I see some positive things, and they're going right back at it with Draisaitl and McDavid again. Looks like going to be the lineup. So, I mean, anyway, we'll see what happens. Maybe if Nuge comes back, they'll change up the lineup. Bruce, what one of the things I've been hoping to see is that they will call up some players from Bakersfield. Mm-hmm. So this week has given me the opportunity. I've seen these 2 games. You watched them tonight. They're going to play Friday. So if the Oilers don't play Friday, I'm going to watch that. And if you watch it, we can do another podcast if we want. Mm-hmm. Anyway, we have a little bit of just some impressions of we saw some of these players in Europe. I've seen the players play a handful of games in Bakersfield this year. So let's go down the list, and we'll focus on the 10 prospects as I see them, starting with Theodor Lennström, who is 26 years old. So he's not really a prospect anymore, but he is on an NHL contract and was here in Edmonton for a time. What did you think of his game tonight?
I saw some of both. I saw one play where he really made there was a breakdown and a bad giveaway at the opposite point for what could have been a breakaway for the Colorado player, And Lindstrom read the trouble early and he took off. And man, can he ever fly? Because he cut that guy off on the other side of the ice. And the guy got sort of not even to the top of the face-off circle. And he already had Lindstrom in his face. And Lindstrom, first of all, forced the guy back. And then when he came at him the second time, Lindstrom just took the puck right off the guy and brought it out on his own. I thought, good, great. But then he was caught in no man's land on the 3-0 goal where there was no defenders anywhere near the net. And he, the left defenseman, had gone all the way over to the right boards to try and make a play. And his right defense partner, who I believe at that time was Vincent DeHarnay,
Yeah.
also got caught on the right side. And there wound up being a guy all alone in front that was, unchallenged, and he was able to pop one top corner. So Lindstrom on that play, he was probably guilty of error by commission, where he tried to do something rather than keeping his position, and it cost him.
He went for the hit on that play,
Mm-hmm.
and they didn't get Lindstrom and DeHarnay did not get support from the center, from the forwards on the ice. Esposito, I think, and Malone, if I'm not mistaken, were out there, and they needed that support on that play because they actually were each taking their man. Now DeHarnay allowed the pass into the slot, but it went to someone who was not covered and needed to be covered. So I continue to like the player because of his fantastic skating ability. I think he's much more of an NHL prospect than Joel Persson ever was, because Lindstrom is a far more advanced skater. He just flies out there, and I like the way he plays the game. He's an active player. He gets involved. He's got a good shot. So I doubt. I wonder if he'll sign another contract, or if the Oilers will have him back. I like him enough. I think that they should. If they lose, let's say they lost Caleb Jones, for instance, to Seattle in the expansion draft, Lindstrom would be, a good kind of fill-in, kind of similar kind of puck-moving defenseman with some jump in his game. So we saw Olivier Rodrigue, Bruce, and he replaced Stuart Skinner after Skinner gave up 3 goals and didn't look very good at all.
Mm-hmm.
Skinner's outplaying, it looks like, Rodrigue considerably this year. Let me just have a look here. He's got one of them in terms of a save percentage. Let me see. It's not even close. Skinner's in the 910 range and Rodrigue is in the 870 range. But tonight, Olivier Rodrigue I thought he looked really good. It was my first close look at him, and he moved very well in the net. He made a lot of good saves, and there might, he was, what was this? He was a 3rd round pick of the Oilers, 2nd round pick, 62nd
last pick of the 2nd round. Yeah.
Yeah. His save percentages was 872 heading into the game. So I liked what I saw. I saw a goalie who actually, and also was fairly good moving the puck, which having seen Mike Smith now, I've come to value that quite a bit. Skinner's save percentage is 914 heading into the game. It'll drop. So, yeah, I was impressed.
Rodriguez, because his was 864 tonight, so he'll probably lose a point.
Yeah.
Anyway, he made some nice saves. I didn't like the way he sealed off the bottom of the net, and I think it cost him on at least 1 goal, and I'm thinking 2 goals. Trying to remember all those damn goals. I mean, it was 6-0 for Colorado before Bakersfield ever got a sniff. And
yeah, there was one there he looked bad.
Each goal, where the guy just kind of went right through him, and he also made like 3 or 4 saves, like very close to his own goal line, and he was playing very deep in his crease. And as a relatively small goaltender, I think he's 6'0". That if he's not out challenging on the top of the blue paint, he's going to have trouble with, power forwards jamming away at pucks in the blue paint. He's got to be out a little higher than that. So I like some of his saves. I didn't like some of his saves, and I didn't like the goals. So I was lukewarm on his performance, frankly.
Skinner really struggled tonight. He's having a better year. The Oilers, this is Skinner's final year. He on his ELC, I believe. So the Oilers have an interesting situation with him because he was ranked, I think, in Craig Button's top 75 prospects. I think he was somewhere in the
Oh,
70s, early 70s. So he's valued highly, but if the Oilers send him back to the HL next year, he'll have to go on waivers and another team could take
uh,
him.
no,
So,
not for goalies, David.
oh,
Goalies
okay.
get a fourth year
Oh,
before the
good.
waivers kicks in, and
Oh,
I
God,
mean
that's good.
it's sort of a widely recognized thing that goalies take a little longer, and the waiver rules are a little different for them. And of course, the games played requirement that applies to skaters is very different for goalies because they don't get charged with the game played when they're backing up. So they accrue games. Even the number one goalie will play 50 or 55, not 80 in a season, right? So they have different rules, but there's a fourth year where they're kind of free and clear before they have to go through that process. So I think my understanding is they would be safe to re-sign Skinner, which I'm certain they're going to do, and send him back down to the minors without having to risk him in the uh, losing him on waivers the way they did a couple of netminders earlier this year.
That's excellent news. I didn't know that. And because I was thinking you can't count on Stuart Skinner to be the backup in the NHL next year. He clearly
Not
needs
yet.
more time in the AHL, I think. And one more year should do it. After another year in the AHL, you'll know, like, is this guy worth keeping or not? They still don't know it because he's kind of he's been playing pretty well this year in terms of save percentage and from what I'm hearing. So that's good news, Bruce. Of course, they have Ilya Konovalov, the young Russian goalie. I don't know if he'll be coming over, so there might be some competition for Rodrigue and Skinner next year if Konovalov, I think his contract's up this summer, if I'm not
Yes.
mistaken. So probably is wise. Maybe he'll go one more year in the Russian league, so he can get a lot of games. But so there's a couple prospects, but none of them are bowling anybody over right now. I don't
Yeah.
think.
Well, Stuart Skinner, to segue to the other goalie that um, we watched tonight, that's an NHL contracted netminder. The Condors came out of the gate slow. Maybe they were a little fat and happy after last night's win. Uh, and Skinner was playing both games as a back-to-back, which I
I
question with
didn't get that.
goalies.
Yeah.
And uh, the the Condors had a bad start, and what they needed was a couple of saves in the early going, and they did not get them. The very first shot of the game went right through Skinner's five hole where his stick should have been, but wasn't. And I mean, it was a close range bang bang play, but it was one where with good positioning you get a save there, and they didn't have it. And they were behind to stay after 1 minute and 46 seconds. And then a couple minutes later, 5:22, uh, he was beaten high blocker with a pretty good shot, but again, I think a savable shot. And this was Alex Newhook, the hot shot that just came out of college, first round draft pick of Colorado. Good Newfoundland boy. And he scored his first pro point on the first goal, his first assist, and then he scored his first pro goal, being the second goal that put him up 2-0 and in very comfortable position. And he had a strong game with number of shots. And Skinner did make a couple saves off a Newhook later in the first period. He went high blocker on him again a couple times, but he got beaten that same spot early in the second period. First shot of the second period, he's out. Jay Woodcroft didn't mess around after that one.
The Bakersfield team was awfully loose in the first period, man. They were just young Max Gilden, I think, gave away the puck on
Yeah.
the first goal. That was a bad
Yeah.
turnover, and it was just no one was covering anyone. It was a mess. They were leaky defensively, that's for sure. Uh, Kemp, young Phil Kemp from was he from Harvard or
Hmm.
Yale? Harvard. He came out um, before the season started. Actually, he left university to play in Sweden.
Right.
He played with Raphael Lavoie on the Vasby team, which was a really terrible team in the Swedish second division. And some people are quite high on Kemp. Bruce, I can't say I'm in that camp. Um, I'm not seeing. I see a smart player, one who tries hard, but I'm a little bit underwhelmed by his game. What are you thinking of him at this point?
Oh, I didn't see him good tonight, and he's sort of he, he's not he's not very smooth. He's not a great skater, and he was late to the dance a couple of times there where, he was sort of also in frame, but he wasn't really in a good place within the frame. And uh, his game to be successful, he's got to be ace at things like blocking out and boxing out and uh, blocking shots, being in the lanes, having his stick in the lanes. And tonight I saw him outside of the lanes a couple of times and not really that mobile to get, to recover when beaten. So I came away from tonight's thing fairly nonplussed about him, young player. I mean, these guys that are just turning pro this year, you got to give him some time, and he's got
For
time.
sure.
But he's starting from a less advanced place than I hoped.
6'3", 210.
Hmm.
Has always been known as a leader on his team. I think he's just 22, just turned 22, if I'm not mistaken, in February. I don't know. So yeah, he's just entered the AHL, which is a very difficult league. It's hard to thrive. So we'll see how he does over time. I'd seen him play in Sweden as well.
Right.
Um, so Marcus Niemelainen didn't play tonight. I had seen him earlier. He looked a heck of a lot better in the AHL than he looked in Finland this year. Cooper Marody, Bruce. What are you thinking of Cooper Marody? He's 24 now. Man,
Uh-huh.
he's just killing it in the league this year. He didn't have a
Mm,
great game tonight,
he did
but
not.
what are your thoughts?
Well, he scored an okay goal last night. I saw parts of the game from last night. To be honest, I finally I finally relented and got the AHL TV subscription when they lowered their prices at mid-season. So I caught up on yesterday's game and I watched tonight's game. And I want to track this team down the stretch. And so I haven't. I saw a lot of these fellas playing overseas this year, but tonight's the first full game that I've seen Bakersfield play. And I was a little disappointed in Marody's game, to be frank. And I think Jay Woodcroft was too, because he took him off the first line and put him down on what I would call the third line uh, with um, with Esposito and Gambardella. And he promoted Raphael Lavoie up to the place of Marody alongside of Ryan McLeod and Tyler Benson, both of whom we'll speak about in a moment. Uh, Marody had a couple of decent plays in combination, but he wasn't really a driver by any sense of the word in this game. I thought he was one of a few Bakersfield players who came up late.
He was flying last night. That
Hmm.
line
Yeah.
itself was flying. He scored a fantastic goal, and he's become more of a scorer this year. He's got 17 goals in 26 games. I think he leads the league. So yeah, he was flat tonight.
Yes.
That whole line was well. He was.
Hmm.
I think McLeod and Benson were actually a bit better.
Yep.
But he is again, after having an off year last year, he's the Patrick Kane of the AHL. Now, if whether of the AHL, Bruce.
No, I
So
hear you.
yeah, he's not the Patrick Kane of the NHL. He's the Patrick Kane of the AHL. He's a dominant player. He's got the puck on a string a lot of the time. He can fly around with it. He makes great passes a lot of the time. He did last night's game. So but he's 24. This is kind of last chance gas for Cooper Marody in terms of being any kind of prospect because he's
Right.
getting up there in age. I'd like to see him called up to Edmonton and see how he does playing with Draisaitl or McDavid. I'd like to see him and Benson get the first call, both of those guys, and slot them in there and see how they do.
He can
So
skate with those guys.
he's smart, Bruce. I think he's
Yeah.
a smart player. He can. Yeah, he could skate with Draisaitl. Who can skate with Connor McDavid? That's a really good question.
Well,
But
Patrick
he's smart.
Maroon could. I mean, there's
Well,
there's
there
there's
there you
more to
go.
the game than speed.
He likes the puck on his stick. Marody does, but he could take and make plays with McDavid. I think he might work better with Draisaitl, and I think Benson might work better with McDavid because Benson's more of a passer of the puck. He doesn't need the puck on his stick. He wins it on the boards and he passes it. But Marody could work just fine, maybe with Draisaitl. Is he much worse of a player or any worse of a player than Dominic Cahoon? He might be a little bit better. Like that's what I'd like to see. We don't know. Cahoon's having mediocre success, mediocre results with Draisaitl. Could Cooper Marody do better? Maybe he could. Um, I wouldn't mind seeing if he could, because what's happening now isn't working, hasn't been working for some time, and I think they need a change. Mike Kesselring, Bruce, he is just turned 21.
Mm-hmm.
He's his dad tells me he's 6'5", 215 pounds now, and or 6'4", 215 pounds. He's played there. This was his 8th game. What did you think of him?
Oh, he looks a little bit awkward, but he's got. I like his hockey sense, and I like the plays that he's able to make under pressure. But he's a great big guy that's I'd say not super coordinated yet, at least. I mean, when you're that size and that young, sometimes it just takes a while for all that for it all to come together. Remember how long that you waited for Jamie Alexiak to put the pieces together?
Finally happened.
Yeah, yeah, and it can, but sometimes it takes the big boys a little bit longer. And let's face it, I mean, he's only been in the pro ranks
Eight
for
games.
8 games. Tonight they actually did announce him with his first professional point with an assist on the Adam Cracknell goal. But I see they've corrected that to give the assists. He started the play, but he passed it to uh, Kevin Gravel, who passed it to Jacob Stukel, who passed it to Adam Cracknell. So those two guys wound up getting the assists, and Kesselring gets the fourth point award, which is no point at all, but he did start the play with a decent breakout pass. Defensively, he has this capacity to come out of nowhere and make a decent defensive play, which he did at least one time tonight. But another time he came out of nowhere and took a holding penalty. So there's that.
He's pretty aggressive out there. I notice he really goes
Hmm.
for it. He gets in their faces, trying to make plays,
Good.
and yeah, I think that's good as well.
Especially now in his career. I mean, he's probably going to have to learn to pick his spots and when to do that and when not to do that. But the time to be learning those lessons are now in the AHL when the mistakes are not as costly.
In both games, he made a play that I liked, and under pressure in his own zone, he wins the puck, and really heads up play on his backhand in kind of an awkward position. He
I remember.
backhanded it to someone in the slot, the defensive slot, breaking the puck out the middle of the ice. He did that tonight, and he did that in the previous game. And I thought, oh, that's a really gutsy and smart play. That's kind of an NHL play. So keep doing that. Keep doing that. And, he's clearly going to be in the AHL for 2 years at least,
Yeah,
probably all three
yeah.
before we see him. He's got a lot of developing to do, but I like that, he's big and he's toolsy. It's funny though, when I say he's big, when Vincent Desharnais is out on the ice, nobody looks big except for Vincent Desharnais. He's listed at 6'7", 228. And I think Ryan Holt, the broadcaster, was saying he's bigger than that now than 228. But Vincent Desharnais is a monster out there, and he makes Kesselring look like an average size player. Um,
Well, he got into a
fight.
well, an argument with a player on Colorado, and the guy was like maybe 5'6", and he came up to his shoulder pads. Didn't even come up to his chin. And the Harney was just looking way down at the guy, and I'm thinking, is that guy on his knees and he just hasn't got up yet because the whistle had gone? No, he was standing up, and it was like easily a foot difference between the two. I can't remember which Colorado guy there was. If you look down the roster and find the shortest guy, it was probably him.
Okay, we haven't talked much about Tyler Benson and Ryan McLeod, and
Oh,
I
and
have to say
Raphael
Ryan.
Lavoie.
Well, we'll be saving the best till last, Bruce, is what we're
Hmm.
doing there.
Okay,
In my opinion,
okay.
Ryan McLeod has taken a step up from what I saw him in the Swiss League earlier this year.
Hmm.
Um, he, he he is flying out there. And on the power play, once he went end to end, did a
Yes,
Connor
he did.
McDavid style rush, going end to end and taking it right to the goalie and almost scoring. He is playing with a tremendous amount of confidence,
Yes, he is.
something that was seemed to be lacking last year. Handling the puck, making plays, making passes. He's shooting better. He scored a great kind of goal on a rush last game
Ooh,
in the
breakaway,
win.
yeah.
And he's got 25 points now in 26 games after kind of mediocre point scoring in his last year. He's 21 years old, 2 full years in the AHL now,
Mm-hmm.
and he looks like he could be ready now or certainly next September or October, whenever the season starts for the NHL next year, to make a move and make the Oilers. His offensive game is completely taken off, and I don't know if he can translate that to the NHL. Like, can he go end to end in the NHL and make that kind of play? But he's doing that at a very young age. He's making that kind of high skill play right now in the AHL. I haven't really got a sense yet. I've always been a little concerned about his play in the defensive slot, just like I am with every center on earth.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure if he's there yet as a center, but as a winger in the NHL, it's kind of nice to think about him cruising up and down the wing because he looks like he can play with skill. Like he can make given goal plays with other skilled players like he's doing with Marody and Benson.
Right.
What's your take?
I loved his game tonight. I thought he did more for me than anybody else on Bakersfield with what he showed in this game. Skating, skating, skating. For one thing, 200 foot game. Like tonight, I watched that game, came away convinced this is a guy who's going to be able to play center. And maybe not right away, but maybe it's going to take him a little while. But uh, some of these, uh, lower round players, and he's a second round pick, so he's not like he came from the dregs of the draft or anything, but he's not sort of an automatic first round pick or anything. And it takes him a while to come up through the ranks, but the difference between him this year and him last year is quite a lot. And
Yeah.
in a positive way, like he was winning faceoffs tonight. Unfortunately, he won two or three so clean they went right past the point man and out. It was one of those nights for Bakersfield, let's face it. But it was uh, he was winning puck battles. He was skating with the puck, skating very confidently with the puck, and doing little subtle little things. Like one play where uh, he cut into the face-off circle on the offensive zone. It looked like he was ready to drive the net, and then he just turned and he dropped the pass to a teammate coming behind him, but he turned in such a way that he completely blocked the lane of the checker so that his line mate, I think it was Benson, wound up with a clear lane, in a different direction. But in the act of dropping the puck off, he protected that puck by preventing the nearest defensive player from having any play of it. So he was just aware of how to use his own body to best advantage. And you know, that's a thing that doesn't necessarily come naturally to young players. You got to learn that sort of thing. And when you see young guys doing stuff like that, it's a very good sign. So I saw lots of good signs. I thought he was good on the penalty kill. He was good on the power play. Like this guy's got a whole lot of game.
So last year in Bakersfield as a 20-year-old, he had 23 points in 56 games
Five
and
goals.
5 goals. And this year he has 25 points in 26 games and 13 goals. So, pretty remarkable. And have to give credit to Ken Holland here. He did such a great job of placing players like McLeod and Lavoie.
Mhm.
I'm not sure maybe every NHL team did, but I think the Oilers did better than
Oh,
almost
they were the best for
they did.
most anyway. They had the
Yeah,
most guys over
and
there.
I think that's really helped players like Lavoie and McLeod.
Hmm.
Who else? Kemp got placed over there. So Benson got placed over there, and Benson. He had kind of a down year last year compared to his year before, and now he's back playing his best game. So good for Ken Holland. That was a key thing, often overlooked, but it's helped these players come out and really start to play well in the AHL to the point where they've gone from, you know, based on his first year in the AHL, McLeod was becoming sort of a suspect. in terms of a prospect. But
Right.
now he's right near the top of the Oilers prospect list again. Benson, Bruce, what did you think of him tonight?
I liked in a limited way, like he made some nice passes, which is his A game. It's moving the puck,
Yeah,
and he was shooting it appropriately from the slot. He scored a fine goal from the slot last night, where he picked the top corner from about 25 feet. Um, and he took a couple of shots from there tonight. One that narrowly missed the post, and a couple that tested the goalie. But he shot from good spots, and they were good tests. None of them went in, but between those, I don't know how many official shots he had in the game. It was three, and he had like he dished the puck well. Like he's very secure with the puck. Like when he's got it, it's going in a good direction, going to a teammate. Not very much in the way of bad turnovers or prayer passes and hoping somebody's around. Like he knows where the puck's going and he knows who it's going to. And so he wasn't the problem tonight. Let's put it that way. I don't suppose that he had a particularly great game by his standards, but he looked like a good, solid professional prospect in that game, and I give him a passing grade. Let's put it that way.
29 points, Bruce, in 24
Mm.
games. That's the kind of like raising of his attacking game that needed to happen for Tyler Benson this year. And I can't, I really am hoping to see him get a chance this year in Edmonton. And I don't know when or if that's going to happen, but I think he's earned it. My favorite player on the Condors right now, in terms of being a prospect, is Raphael Lavoie. And I think what he has is what the Oilers need. This guy he is a direct hockey player. He gets the puck in the offensive end, and he's got one thing in mind: take it to the net. Take it to the net, and that means either work yourself in as quickly as possible into a place where you can shoot the puck, or just take it to the net. And he didn't do that as much tonight. He did that more last game, but the Oilers don't have that shoot first player who's got
Oh,
other than Leon Draisaitl, and Leon Draisaitl isn't really a shoot first player unless he loves passing the puck.
yeah.
But Lavoie doesn't love passing the puck. He loves getting the
Can
puck and
pass it, but
he
he
can
loves
pass it,
to
but he
shoot.
loves
He
getting
loves
the
to shoot.
puck and shooting the puck. And can he ever shoot that puck? He scored a fantastic goal tonight. It was a 4-on-3 power play, but he was essentially just a little bit inside the face-off dot and a little bit above it, from a grade B scoring chance area outside the grade area, and he just beat the goalie with the shot. That's the kind of shot that he's exhibited all year long, and he's I don't know how long it's going to take him in the AHL, Bruce, and it might take him a full season down there. I mean, Ken Holland really does like to have his players spend some time in the AHL, generally speaking.
And
So
with
I could
reason.
see, yeah, with reason. So I could see him spending that time down there. But it's hard not to start to think of him maybe being the answer to what the Oilers need on one of these top lines, because playing with Connor McDavid and having getting McDavid setups, McDavid sets up
He
players
scored some
constantly.
goals. He scored some
He will
goals.
score some goals, and he might do it sooner than later because of his offensive instincts. What are your thoughts?
Well, last night he scored a great goal as well. Just a wicked snapshot, about an inch inside the post before the goalie could get over. That one he scored from the left face-off circle. Tonight he scored from the right face-off circle. Uh, and he just basically overpowered the goalie glove side. And when I say the goalie, I'm talking about Adam Werner, who at that point was about 6 minutes away from his second consecutive shutout. Like the guy was hot and made a lot of good saves in this game. And uh, Lavoie just flat out beat him from about maybe 25 feet out with just a power snapshot. And he came in, he's played 6 games now. The first 2 games he played, he led the team in shots both nights with 4 shots. Like he's a shooter first, and he came right in, guns blazing right from this first game. Well, he had no points in his first 2 games, Well, now he's got a 4-game point streak with 3 goals and an assist in the last 4 games. And, this is a guy who's still sort of dipping his toes in the water in terms of North American pro hockey. And already he's starting to produce, 3 goals in 6 games. If you look at the overall picture, that's a nice output. And, you could see why with the 2 shots he scored on the last 2 games. He's a shooter, and he's got the ability to pick corners and beat goalies. And nice to have a couple of those, or even one of those, floating around in your system.
The truth is about players who are going to be offensive players in the NHL, they tend to announce themselves fairly early in their careers. Like they're not waiting around to start putting up points. So when they get to the league like the AHL, like the guys who are going to score later on in the NHL, they usually start off scoring pretty well. So it's a very good sign that Lavoie is doing this. As you say, 4 points in his last 4 games. And I think his stock has gone up considerably since the Oilers drafted him. He had a really good year. His draft 1 year plus 1 year was really good. He made Team Canada, for instance, and he scored at a very high rate, 38 goals in 55 games in the Quebec League that year. And this year, it's
82 points.
It's gone right up again this year because he had a very good year with Vasby on a not very good team, and now he's looking good in Bakersfield. So all the arrows are pointing in the right direction, and it'll be interesting to see how quickly he progresses. The other thing I like about him, Bruce, is he's huge. He's 6'3", 205. They list him at 205. He looks bigger than that. He just looks. He will be bigger than that. He's a great big guy. His skating is okay, and he's aggressive. He's got a nasty edge to him. I would say more than any other player on the team, actually. I don't know if we've seen it at the AHL yet, but I saw it in Sweden. He can get really chippy, and pretty rough out there, which is great for a scoring winger. He doesn't shrink from violent play. He brings it. So.
He's got some edge, doesn't
he? He certainly does.
And sometimes that edge gets results in bad penalties. So that's that's the price you have to pay. But that edginess will also buy him some time and some space at times, and he doesn't need a whole lot of either to turn it into a shooting and potentially scoring opportunity. So in Vasby this year, which granted is the second division Swedish league, but still a step up from junior hockey. He scored 23 goals, 45 points in 51 games, and he led his professional team in scoring as basically a freshly turned 20-year-old. So he made that time over there count, and he's hit the ground running in Bakersfield. That he was ready to go as soon as he got over here. Yeah.
So this is a very good Bakersfield team. They didn't look like it tonight, but they're excuse me, winning at about 600 clip. And the hard part that Jay Woodcroft is going to have is finding ice time for all the players. But I think he's doing an okay job, Bruce.
Yeah.
He has like at even strength, the players play relatively similar amount of ice times. He rolls his lines and defense pairings. So the key is, who does he have out there on the PK and the power play? He's got one power play where he's got all the prospects together. Marody, McLeod, Lavoie, and Benson and Lindstrom are I think are the number one power play. And then on the other power play, he's got the veterans, Griffin, Malone, Gambardell, and Cracky, as they call him, Cracknell. I would like to see Woodcroft use some of these younger players on the PK a little bit more. I don't know which ones are suitable for it. He has McLeod out there, and he has Kemp on the PK, but Kesselring's got to get out there. And I don't know, maybe Benson. Like I don't know why that hasn't happened yet, frankly. But I just think that's the only critique I would have of Jay Woodcroft's handling of the players is he's going with the veterans on the PK. And I just would like to see definitely Kesselring, maybe Benson. I don't see Marody as a penalty killer, but I don't think Lavoie is a penalty killer. But those other two guys might be. So maybe he'll work them in there. I'm just surprised Benson hasn't been worked in yet, because it's one more thing that would help him get an NHL job if he could excel as a
Right.
PK player. And I don't see why he couldn't. So,
Well, McLeod seems to be front and center on the PK unit, taking the
yes.
first face off on the unit, and at least on depending on which line was on the ice that took the penalty. Like he was certainly part of the rotation on each of the penalty kills. I think he might have been in the group that was scored on for the second power play goal that Colorado, with their very good power play, got tonight. Um, but I thought McLeod was good on the kill up until that point. And he's dangerous. Like he'll counterattack with that speed of his and the decent skill that he's got. And he's a bit of a threat while shorthanded, but also decent enough. Just making the routine plays and getting the puck out of the zone. So there's a whole lot to like in that player, Dave.
If he can win faceoffs on the PK, Bruce, that'll go a long way in earning the
Right.
trust of Dave Tippett. I think I heard Ryan Holt say, and I haven't watched enough games to be sure, but the coach usually sends out Esposito and Cracknell as the
Mm-hmm.
first unit on PKs.
Right. Okay.
This is a team. The Bakersfield team does have just a really excellent core group of veteran players on this team.
Mm-hmm.
They have that in place. Let me just
I've got Cracknell, Griffith, Malone, Gambardella, Stanton, Gravel as six guys that have been around for a while. Maybe Gambardella a little less so because they signed him out of college, but he's been in the system for 3 or 4 years. And the other guys are veteran pros, and so I think that is the template that he's building around, that he's able to slot his young guys in and put them in good places. So I think they got a good formula down there.
So I don't know if there's going to be playoffs. I don't think they know if there's going to be playoffs in the AHL this year. If there was playoffs in the AHL this year, this team could go far in the playoffs if they can get goaltending, because this is a very good team. Might be the best AHL team that I've seen, actually, because of the veteran presence. Actually, it's a really strong group of players that they have together. Stanton is a very good defenseman, and so is Gravel at this level. Seth Griffith is a fantastic little attacker, and Cracknell and Malone are great two-way players at this level of play.
Right.
And
Uh,
they're supported by this young attacking group, which is pretty
well,
strong uh, by AHL standards. So
three of them
I
are
don't
in the
know.
top 10 scorers, right?
Yeah, I don't know if there's going to be playoffs, and even if there were, these guys might be called up for the Oilers playoff run. I would suspect that at least McLeod and Benson will be called up for the Oilers playoff run. And I wouldn't be surprised if Marody was either. So
Well, what I'm anticipating, David, is they'll have some playoffs, but it will be just within the division, and that
yes,
they won't ever play for the
Calder Cup.
Calder Cup, but they'll play, for within their divisions like we're doing here in NHL, but just that far, and then calling it a day is what I'm guessing might happen.
Well, the one thing that could change that, Bruce, is they have an incredible vaccination program in the United States right now. And they don't yet have fans in the stands. But if they can start selling tickets, it might be a huge incentive for those
Right.
AHL owners. Because what they're worried about, I think, is just the cost of extending the season.
Mhm.
But by mid-May or the end of May or June, the United States might just be rolling. I mean, I saw a chart today, Bruce, for the first time since the start of the pandemic.
Mhm.
When you compare like this week this year to the week the previous before the pandemic, I think to 2019, there was more cars on the road this week in the United States than there was before the pandemic in 2019 for the
Wow.
similar week. So for the first time in since the pandemic started, so
Wow.
they're rolling down there. So maybe things will change fast. Maybe that's what they're waiting for to see before they announce if there's going to be playoffs or not. I hope there is. I'd like to see this team compete in the playoffs, and it would be very good for players like Lavoie, for instance, to get that playoff run under his belt. Maybe same goes, and usually they keep the HL players down there, don't they, for the playoffs? If
Typically. Unless they
Yeah,
really need a guy,
yeah,
they'd rather have him playing playoff games down there than watching
sitting
from
around.
above up here. So, yeah, it was one of the funny moments of tonight's game was one of those cardboard cutout fans bought it during the game. A puck went over the glass and drilled this cardboard cutout and knocked him down the stairs to the bottom. And then
Tore
so
my heart out,
had
Bruce.
a little bit of a laugh out of that.
Yeah, those I love. I think what they've done is take pictures of season ticket holders.
Yeah, they're real people that the
I
pictures
actually think
are
that's
real,
really
are their
sweet.
pets or whatever. Yeah, they
Yeah,
did the same thing in the curling, and it was a real nice touch.
the Oilers should have done that. I think this is brilliant. Alrighty, Bruce. I have we got any final thoughts?
Well, my final thought is just looking at the AHL writ large this year because of the taxi squads in the NHL and because of the number of players that are kind of in this middle zone that normally would be in the AHL, but they aren't there because they're on taxi squads and kind of in limbo on the NHL. So I've taken to thinking of it as being the A minus HL, where it's not quite up to its normal standards because guys like well, I mean, you could look at the guys on the taxi squad here in Edmonton. Some of those guys would be, playing in the AHL this year, and the league would be, a little higher standard. So I wonder if that kind of the league's a little bit watered down, and for making it a little bit easier for crackerjack prospects like, uh, you know, Ryan Malone, Cooper Marody, Tyler Benson to light it up a little bit more than they might if they were playing against the usual competition.
Yeah. We sometimes hear from a fan called Rich at Eastern Refugee on Twitter, who's a big
Yes,
Bakersfield fan.
he
He was
sure
making the point
is.
that he actually thinks that the competition in the West is quite high
Hmm.
in Bakersfield because these teams are stacked with first round draft picks. And it's much
Colorado,
easier
yeah,
to shift players back and forth. There's no quarantine. I don't think moving the teams back and players back and forth. So like if there's an Evan Bouchard of the LA Kings, he's probably playing
right.
for the team down there, which is really unfortunate. For the Oilers don't have that, but such is life in the pandemic. Bruce, good talking to you tonight.
Yeah,
Thanks.
all right. Pleasure talking hockey always. And nice to have hockey to talk about, even if it's not Oilers hockey these days with these cancellations. This was supposed to be an Oilers game night, but hopefully we'll get one of those on Friday, if not Saturday for sure. Pick it up. So, anyway, thanks for listening, everyone.
Yeah, we always seem to find a game to talk about, Bruce, even it have to be in Sweden or Moscow or Bakersfield. So, yes, thanks everyone for listening. And in the meantime, and in between times, this has been another edition of the Cult of Hockey podcast. Good night, Ed Whalen.